Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar for today, Powerful Interactive 3D Technical Illustrations. Very exciting. My name is Rob Romanowski. I'm the Director of Sales Operations for 3HTI, and joining us today is Brandon Arnold, Applications Engineer from PTC, who is going to give us a quick overview of Creo Illustrate, and he is also going to give us a brief demonstration on Creo Illustrate. Now, what's really cool about this software is basically you can take your actual CAD files and assembly files and convert them into illustrations that are needed for service manuals or for any other type of illustration manuals. So what your result and what you end up with is not some type of cartoonish looking 2D flat document, but you receive something that's rich in 3D with a lot of features and capabilities that will allow you within Creo Illustrate to make the parts stand out via using different colors, so that from a service manual standpoint, it's very clear to the person using it what they need to do and what the next steps are. So I'm pretty excited to see this today myself. Real quick, a couple things about 3HTI. I mean, we're a systems integrator with a focus on helping discrete manufacturing companies in all phases of product development, starting with design and through manufacturing, and this includes analysis and the end of life cycle of products. And our goal is to help our partners operate more effectively and efficiently to overall become leaders in their respective industries, as well as, most importantly, improving profits. Because if you're improving profits and you're profitable, your business is growing, and you can help all the people that work for you and help them live better lives too. So the software and the 3D printing solutions we provide help with the digital transformation of taking concepts and ideas and transforming them into a digital file that can be used for augmented reality, for 3D printing, analysis, and any other way that a part or assembly needs to be shared with others inside and outside the enterprise. So I didn't update this particular slide, unfortunately, from our MathCAD webinar from the other week. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to pass everything over to you, Brandon. If you have any questions while we're going through the webinar, while Brandon's going through the webinar, please type those into the dashboard. We'll try to answer them as we go, but we'll definitely have a question and answer session at the end. So Brandon, you have the con.
All right, great. Thank you for that. Thank you very much, Robert. So as Robert had mentioned, my name is Brandon Arnold. I work as an application engineer in the Virtual Center of Excellence at PTC. And as Robert said, we'll be going through Creo Illustrate. So just as another brief explanation of that, so Creo Illustrate is going to be that tool that is going to allow you to create these rich 3D technical illustrations, and they can be linked to any 3D CAD source that lets us build out our illustrations faster, and we can also do it independently or from other engineering resources. So some of the challenges with technical illustrations, so obviously they're going to be very vital for manuals, for service, for part information for the consumer, and they're quite vital to communicating that product, service, and parts information. And so throughout the enterprise, you need documentation in various different forms, formats, and styles. And that's where Creo Illustrate is going to come into play. So just a few more challenges when building out illustrations manually. Not only does it add a level of complexity, but oftentimes you may have issues with it being out of date. So that's where these rich and accurate 3D CAD models come into play to actually be used for our technical illustration. Some of the problems that may be faced along the way is illustrators may not necessarily know CAD, and with Creo Illustrate, it makes that entire process much more simplistic. So if we're having engineers creating our technical publishing content, you want it to be as simplistic as possible. That way they're spending less time grabbing those figures in, and they're spending more time actually designing. Another problem too is we are unable to start the illustration until the design is done, just in case any changes are made along the way, so we don't have to go back through and redo work that's already been done. Not only that, but when a change to a component in the design is made, it will require a manual updates, or it may not be completed. And after the design is finished, we may have a technical publication change that would require us to redo illustrations or simply go back through work that's already been done. So that's where Creo Illustrate is going to come into play. Some of the capabilities well, first off, it is a separate Creo application designed to create illustrations, as I mentioned, directly from the 3D CAD data. What's nice about it is designed for a non-CAD user. So even without familiarity with CAD, it's still a very simplistic tool and very intuitive to use. The Illustrator is kept in mind with Creo Illustrate, and it doesn't matter what source the CAD file is from, it is CAD heterogeneous. So the file can be a Creo file, product view, step, or even third-party CAD files. So we have these rich 3D technical illustrations in a lot of different formats. What's nice is it's going to understand our bill of materials, and what that means is our parts, all the individual parts that we have, are going to be able to be identified via these intelligent callouts. So as I mentioned, the Illustrator doesn't necessarily need to know what the components are. Very simplistic to just be able to look in this and follow through with all the information given with Creo Illustrate. In addition, we have an extendable library for different symbols or graphics. We can add in, as you can see here, there's hands that can be added in, or different tools like a hammer. And it does come with a default library of tools, but additional graphics can always be added in. Not only that, we have extensive graphical techniques such as different rendering options. We have cross-section views, we can do thicker thin line options, and a lot more. And in addition, we also have the ability to very easily create animations for 3D view. And that way we can demonstrate a number of things: how to replace something, how to pull something apart, or how to fix something. We can create these animations for things such as that as well. Just quickly mentioning, Creo Illustrate does have the ability to be fully integrated with PTC's product lifecycle management and service systems. So it may be tied together completely with Windchill. Without Windchill, that's perfectly fine. You can still use Creo Illustrate to create rich and interactive 2D and 3D illustrations from the CAD models. The interaction with Windchill is simply going to make it easier to maintain and update all of your CAD files. We can also publish to multiple different formats, which I will show you guys, and there are multiple different ways for the consumer or the user to actually view and receive that information. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into the demonstration of Creo Illustrate. All right, so for this demonstration, what we're going to do here is, first off, just import a few different types of files into Creo Illustrate. So we're going to start with a loader assembly file, which is a PVZ file, which is essentially just a lightweight representation of a CAD file. We can also add in different file types with no issues, as I've said. So next we want to simply add in an assembly file, and this is going to be for the arm. Following that, we can very easily adjust the X, Y, and Z coordinates here to better fit onto our assembly. Now that that's done, we have just one final thing we want to add into here, one last file to complete this, and then we can start our work. So for the last one, this is just going to be a step file for the hydraulics here. All right, so now we have all the different files added into here, and we can begin our work. So first off, we'll go ahead and just simply duplicate this figure. That way, we don't have to worry about if we make any changes to the default figure about reverting back to that. We can just start manipulating these other figures that we're creating. So let's go ahead and give it a name here and then start using some of the powerful tools in Creo Illustrate. So we can go ahead and just adjust the lighting here, different shading and orientations there. We also have a few different render modes here. We can do things such as shaded with edges. We can do a typical shaded illustration or a black and white view. And there's other options that we have as well. Now, as I said, we can also very easily create animations in Creo Illustrate. So here we have a disassemble bucket process. We have a series of different processes that are going to remove the bucket on this component here. So we have all these steps already laid out. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what it takes to add another step, the actual removal of the bucket now that all the pins and everything are removed. And I'll show and animate what this all looks like after it's done as well. So let's go ahead and select on the bucket, and here we have a few different effects that we can do into this. If we wanted to have the bucket fade out so it's not in our point of view anymore, we can do that. If we wanted to simply change the color, we can do that. For this example, let's just go ahead and add a flash effect to it. And then using the transform tool, this allows us to easily manipulate where we want the bucket to go. Very simplistic tool to use. So following that, if we wanted to add in some notes, we could do that just for additional clarity of what the steps are actually doing. And then we can even go in and manipulate our step editor here a little bit more. So basically all this does is we can change how long it takes for the animations, the individual animations to play out, or we can adjust when those animations actually start and end. So for example, if we only wanted to have this effect flash for the first half of the duration, we could always adjust that. So let's go ahead and just simply increase the duration. Everything else is fine the way it is. We can just keep that. So let's see what that looks like now. So these were the steps that were already added in previously. We have that flashing effect being utilized, and then we have these pins being removed. And we're also utilizing that hammer tool, one of the tools in the library that I mentioned, just for detailed clarity of what exactly is going on. So now that these pins are removed, we play that final step, which is the bucket flashing and then pulling away from the rest of the assembly here. Very simple process to create animations. All right, now let's go into something a little bit differently. So let's go into another figure that we have in here. And basically, our goal here is going to be to create a figure for technical documents. And we have a service manual that's already completed or just about completed that we want to finish up. So this is what the purpose of this illustration will be. So we can easily select a few different components. We can see them being highlighted over on the left-hand side, what parts they actually are. And then we can use different tools such as adding in explode lines so we can see where these would conjoin the washer and the bolts here. Following that, we can do things such as insets, which is going to be a detailed view, a more zoomed up view of a different spot. And we can even apply different rendering modes to these as well. So let's go ahead and apply a rendering mode to that. And now as we rotate the bucket around, we still have that view that we had originally set, even though the bucket perspective has shifted. Here, just different layouts that we have. These can be configured much more than what is being done here as well. So now we have those done. The next thing we want to do is put in some callouts on this. We want to see what these components are. So we want to select all these different parts and then put some item numbers on here. So we're immediately brought with some item numbers, and we can pull in this information down below, which is our bucket bill of materials. So now as we interact with these different callouts, we can actually see that being reflected down below in the bill of materials, as well as the structure over on the left-hand side. So very simplistic, being able to figure out what components are what and where they're actually located in the figures. So now that we have that done, let's go back into our first figure, and we're going to just simply publish this off now. And once we publish this off, the idea is we want anyone else within the company to be able to view it, obviously. So what we're going to do is hop here into Creo View. So this is basically just going to be a viewing, essentially a viewing tool, and we're just going to be pulling up all that information that we had just published off within Creo Illustrate. We can use something such as Creo View Express, which is completely free. So any illustrations that have been done in Illustrate, we can see all that right here. So let's go ahead and just simply hop into here real quick and open up that file that we have. Now that we have that done, we can see we have all of our different figures over here that we were just manipulating. We can go and see essentially all the same information that we had previously. We're just not able to manipulate it much in here. And same thing, even the disassembly process that we had just created, we can also see that. So once this is done, we want to publish the file off a little bit differently. So let me hop back into Creo Illustrate. So here, let's go ahead and change the representation to a 2D illustration. And this is going to make it look a little bit differently, which you will see here in a second. So same thing, save it off there. And then we'll open it once again in Creo View. All right, so now that that's open, we can see that we have all these disassemble bucket process sequences listed over on the left-hand side. And what this does is this applies, first off, it applies different stylizing effects for 2D view. We also have each one of these disassembly processes. They're all going to be separate links over here that we can actually click on. So if we wanted to save this off in a service manual, one of the steps along the way, we can easily do that with this 2D representation here. So let's go ahead and save our bucket here with the bill of materials. And this has all the different call outs and part numbers applied to it. So we can simply select the whole bill of materials here and just copy this in for later use. And then we want to save this image off. So we want to save this as an image file. And there's a few different image files that we can save it off as, a JPEG, a PDF, PNG. This one will just save off as a PDF. Following that, we can just go through some very simple settings to adjust page size, orientation, resolution, and then we'll go and see what that looks like. So here we have our bucket with our detailed views, and we also had that bill of materials. So let's go ahead and paste that over here. And just like that, we now have a pretty detailed illustration here of all the different components in here with the detailed views as well. Let's save something off a bit differently here. Let's go to this whole animation process, and we'll save this one off for a Word document. We'll be using this in a document that's almost fully completed. So let's go ahead and just simply save this off as a PNG. And then from there, we want to be able to import this into our document. So we have a service document here that has, so far it has every single step listed here for disassembling the actual bucket, removing the pins and everything else using our illustrations that we had created. But we're missing one final step, which is what we had actually just finished up, which is to remove the bucket. So in Word, we're just going to insert the picture, go to the folder location, and then instead of just inserting it, we'll actually link it to the file. So if we make any changes to the Creo Illustrate file, if this final step changes a little bit, let's say some of the coloring got adjusted or something along the lines of that, since it's linked to the file, if that's the case, then that will actually be updated, and we can from there just go ahead and pull it in and have everything published off. So that's just a brief overview of a lot of the capabilities within Creo Illustrate. I do have just a few more slides to go through, but uh, through all that, we were able to see how we're creating animations, some of the powerful tools for coloring or rendering that we have in there, publishing this off to a service manual, and all that. Very simplistic process and easy to follow along as well. So let me go ahead back into the PowerPoint slides here briefly and finish up here. All right, so with Creo Illustrate, a lot of the value of it being linked to the 3D sources, as you can see, it makes it much quicker to create illustrations and then update them when the CAD is actually updated. We can do all that work independently from the engineers if the engineers were or are doing that work. And what that means is we're cutting down on duplicate work. So we don't need to have a designer build something and then build it all over again. And one way to maximize the use, which I have shown you, is by putting them into documents, which makes them much better, much more accurate pictures, and much more user-friendly as well. So overall, this is going to speed the time to market. So if you're waiting on shipping a product out because you need the service manuals, for example, that's not a good thing, and it's very valuable to get those out quicker. And overall, that's going to improve both customer and user satisfaction because you're given much more accurate manuals or illustrations with all these rich graphics for easier use. So that's about all I have for Creo Illustrate. I thank you all for coming along, and I can go ahead and send it back over to Robert to wrap up.
Thanks, Brandon. Nice job.
Thank you.
Nice job and a good overview. So to wrap up here, if you have any questions or if you want to see a more detailed presentation of Creo Illustrate specific to your CAD file and your specific company's needs, feel free to contact us at info@3hti.com, or you can email me directly at rromanowski@3hti.com, and we can get you set up and give you something a little more detailed. So that is going to conclude our webinar for today. I want to thank everybody for being on. And Brandon, I want to thank you again for doing such a great job and for your time today. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of this Thursday and the rest of summer, and have a great, long, and relaxing Labor Day weekend. Take care.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, everyone.